Welcome again in the next video related to the issues in taxation. Guys, we are dealing with the course of issues in Pakistan economy and this is your module 4 और इसका नाम क्या है? Yes, this is public finance and fiscal policy. So far we have discussed 3 topics or 3 videos on this 4th module. One is structure of government, then structure of taxation, and then we had discussed issues in taxation. Issues in taxation हमने last video में भी discuss किया. Last video में we had discussed and we had identified कि issues in taxation जो है we'll discuss on 2 different levels, federal taxes and provincial taxes or resource mobilization at provincial level. So last video में हमने discuss किया था फेडरल टैक्सेशन लेवल और फेडरल टैक्सेस के जो बेसिक इश्यूज हैं या जो फीचर्स हैं, जो प्रॉब्लम्स हैं. And in today's video we'll discuss the issues in taxation or resource mobilization at provincial level. So let's start. So guys, if you remember, we had discussed while discussing the structure of government and structure of taxation कि पाकिस्तान में structure of government में बहुत बड़ा change आया after the 7th NFC awards एंड 18th अमेंडमेंट. उससे पहले प्रोविंशियल एट फेडरल के जो डिफरेंट जो रोल था वो बिल्कुल चेंज हो गया इन 2 अमेंडमेंट्स के बाद. तो व्हाट वाज द सिचुएशन प्रायर टू दीज 2 डेवलपमेंट्स? एज वी हैड डिस्कस्ड अर्लियर कि जो फेडरल लेवल पे बहुत ह्यूज टैक्सेस कलेक्शन हो जाती थी. 90% ऑफ द रेवेन्यू और टैक्स कलेक्शन was at the federal level and rest of the 10% was divided between the 2 rest of the ties of the government, local level and provincial level. तो federal level पे 90% tax collection है and 10% tax is with the provincial and local level. But when comes to the delivery of services or responsibilities, the role of the provinces remains critical in a sense that the provision of basic social services like education, then health, then sanitation and other social services that lies with the provincial government or the local government. तो उसके हवाले से there was a question and there was examination. But अगर हम revenue collection देखें तो that lies with the major portion lies with the federal government. So क्या सिचुएशन थी? ये सारी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटीज़ के लिए there were recurring accounts of the provincial governments and they used to access the revenue collected at the federal level. They used to access the revenues from the divisible pool of resources at the federal level for their recurring accounts. And when comes the problem of deficit with the provincial governments, so deficit financing was done through the grants in aid component or the loans through the federal government or by the federal government. So that was the situation prior to the 1991 NFC awards के जो provincial level है उस पे जो resources हैं, they need their resources to fulfill or to deliver, so they access resources from the federal divisible pool, and whenever they'll have deficit, so deficit is financed through the grants in aid component or loans by the federal government. But when comes the time period of 1991 NFC awards, उसमें क्या हुआ? जो एक major development थी कि federal government stopped all such payments to the provincial government. Rather, there was a pressure on the provincial governments to maintain their house in order and to self-finance their expenditures. कि अपने जो expenditures हैं वो self-finance करें, अपने revenue खुद generate करें. So that was the major development after the 1991 NFC awards. Provincial level पे resource mobilization or revenue generation had many problems, or there are many areas which could be identified as a problem of generating the resources or revenue collection at the provincial level. So these were identified by the Asha Ghaus and Asif Iqbal and mentioned in your recommended book. The first problem which was mentioned is that there is limited scope of provincial taxes. If you recall, we already discussed कि जो federal level पे बहुत huge taxes collected. There were number of taxes at the federal level like income tax, excise tax, sales tax. So when there are already number of taxes at the federal level, so they left very low scope with the provinces to have more taxes at the provincial level. So limited scope of taxation है provincial level पे. सो एक तो प्रॉब्लम ये है कि रिसोर्स मोबिलाइजेशन के लिए देयर इज़ वेरी लिमिटेड स्कोप एट द प्रोविंशियल लेवल. सेकेंड इज़ द पुअर टैक्स एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन. दैट इज़ द मेजर प्रॉब्लम एज वेल कि जो हमारी टैक्स अथॉरिटीज़ हैं, ये टैक्स एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन है, दैट इज़ पुअर, दैट इज़ नॉट एफिशिएंट. दे आर अनेबल टू कलेक्ट एंड प्रॉपरली इम्प्लीमेंट द टैक्सेस एट ऑल लेवल्स. So there is revenue deficit all the time. And third very important observation is that provincial level पे जो government है, they are unable to access three different and very important areas of taxation. One is the agriculture income tax. तो agriculture income tax अभी भी जितना उसमें potential है वो वैसा tax collect नहीं हो रहा. The reasons behind, there were very strong interest groups behind evasion of agriculture income tax. That might be the reason, but the observation is कि provincial government जो है, they are unable to access the resources at the provincial level, and the important areas identified are the agriculture income tax, जो कि वैसा collection नहीं हो रही जितनी के potential है. टैक्स ऑन वैल्यू एडेड इन सर्विसेज सेक्टर. इस सर्विसेज सेक्टर पे जो वैल्यू एडेड टैक्स है वो भी वैसी कलेक्शन नहीं प्रोविंशियल गवर्नमेंट कर पाई है सो फार, जो कि जितना उसमें पोटेंशियल है. एंड द लास्ट वन इज़ कैपिटल गेन्स ऑन इमूवेबल प्रॉपर्टी. तो इमूवेबल जो प्रॉपर्टी है उसका एक तो प्रॉपरली रिकॉर्ड ही नहीं होता है, तो देयर इज स्टिल स्कोप ऑफ इंक्रीजिंग द रेवेन्यू बाय हैविंग कैपिटल गेन्स फ्रॉम द इमूवेबल प्रॉपर्टी. तो these are the three different important areas identified through which provincial governments can gain more revenue, and they are unable to access the complete potential of the revenue which these areas have. प्रोविंशियल लेवल पे एज वी आर ऑलरेडी डिस्कसिंग जो टैक्स इलास्टिसिटी है वो ही बहुत लो है. सो इसी वजह से प्रोविंशियल लेवल पे जो रेवेन्यू ग्रोथ है, ये टैक्स की जो रेवेन्यू कलेक्शन है उसकी ग्रोथ है, दैट इज स्टिल लो. And the very important is that provincial governments do very less effort at the fiscal level. They used to have no greater fiscal effort for increasing their revenues. उसकी reason क्या है? Because they know they have an opportunity to have an automatic access to the ad hoc revenue deficit grants from the federal government. So they used to declare that they are having higher revenue deficit. So उनको वहाँ से revenue deficit grant जो है वो फेडरल गवर्नमेंट से मिल जाती है. तो एक ये भी रीज़न है जिसकी वजह से प्रोविंशियल जो गवर्नमेंट्स हैं दे डू नॉट गो फॉर हायर फिजिकल एफर्ट फॉर इंक्रीजिंग देयर रेवेन्यू एट प्रोविंशियल लेवल. As we have discussed के provincial level पे there was a pressure by the federal government to increase their revenue and to self-finance the expenditure. So provincial government adopted the policy of diversified resource mobilization strategy. They focused over the three different areas. One is they, instead of launching and introducing new taxes, they focused over the already existing taxes. उसमें से revenue further increase किया जा सकता है. Then they removed various sanctions, exemptions and concessions at the provincial level for increasing their revenue generation. And the last one is they try to expand their tax net through which they'll be able to create or generate more revenue. तो ये तीनों areas के ऊपर उन्होंने काम किया और उसका जो result था वो ये था कि by adopting these measures they were able to have more revenue through these provincial taxes, and they managed to increase the revenue in that time period when they did all these measures. That was a positive note, but if we look and if we like to have the brief conclusion of issues in taxation in Pakistan, so there are some things to be mentioned. There is latest study done by various public sector organizations, and that identified that there are hundreds and thousands of multi-billionaires living in Pakistan. They're enjoying luxurious lives and they do not pay any tax. Rather, they don't bother to pay tax. They used to have tax evasion. These are called tax dodgers. And every tax dodging and every tax concession and exemption used to have some basic strong vested interest group behind in that concession or tax evasion working in Pakistan. जैसे कि एग्रीकल्चर इनकम टैक्स की बात की, यू ऑल वेल फेमिलियर कि हमारे बहुत सारे पार्लियामेंटेरियंस हैं, दे आर बिग लैंडलॉर्ड्स, सो दैट इज़ द इंटरेस्ट ग्रुप behind tax evasion through agriculture taxation. But FPR expects to increase their revenue through amnesty scheme they have introduced. So this is all about the issues in taxation. We still have discussed issues very briefly due to short of time and the constraint of the videos, but again the same advice सारे स्टूडेंट्स के लिए, गो टू योर रिकमेंडेड बुक और वहाँ से इसको थॉरली स्टडी करें टॉपिक को वीडियो के साथ ही, सो यू विल बी एबल टू अंडरस्टैंड एंड कॉम्प्रहेंड द टॉपिक ऑफ टैक्सेशन एंड स्ट्रक्चर ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट. वी आर डिस्कसिंग फोर्थ मॉड्यूल विच इज़ फिस्कल पॉलिसी, और उसमें जो इम्पॉर्टेंट एरिया वी हैव डिस्कस स्ट्रक्चर ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट, टैक्सेशन एंड इश्यूज रिलेटेड टू टैक्सेशन. इन द नेक्स्ट वीडियो विल बी डिस्कसिंग द डेफिसिट एंड द डेट, पब्लिक डेट, विच इज़ अनदर इम्पॉर्टेंट एरिया ऑफ द फिस्कल पॉलिसी, और उससे रिलेटेड हम इश्यूज़ को भी डिस्कस करेंगे. आज की वीडियो इज़ डन and I expect you people go to your recommended book and have a comprehensive study from there to understand this topic of issues in taxation. See you in the next video.